Hey, this is Jason from the Horror Slash. On this podcast, we explore horror through a female perspective. Over a dozen women from different countries, different careers, from their first horror experience to horror and sex. We dig deep on the Horror Slash's women who effing love horror. How did horror become such a big part of your life?
So ever since I was little, honestly, as early as I can remember, I was just really attracted to fear, which sounds kind of cuckoo, but oh well.
When I was little, I don't even remember watching them, but my mom always told me, she said, the more blood and guts that were on the TV, the more you were like obsessed with it.
Honestly, growing up, my mom was in love with horror movies. So she, from a very small age, which probably now people would look at it and be like, oh, don't show that to your kids.
My mom had a big collection in the laundry room, oddly, of like 90s thriller movies.
Well, it all started when I was a kid. I think it was about 8, and my mom brought home The Lost Boys.
So I feel like I was kind of born into it. My mother and my grandmother both loved horror movies. They both would watch them together. I grew up watching them with them. They played with Ouija boards. So it was always horror around the house.
Horror became a big part of my life when I was very young, and it kind of just has always stayed there.
I think I was always drawn to it since I was little. Like even as like a little kid, I remember watching made-for-TV horror movies. I also grew up watching like a lot of old-timey movies, so including like the old Universal stuff. So that was probably like my gateway into like modern horror, watching like Frankenstein and Dracula.
When I was a little girl, I always had a fascination with macabre, and I kind of owe it to the fact that my birthday's in October.
Probably when I was about 6 or 7, I remember watching Nightmare on Elm Street at like 2:00 in the morning on basic cable, because when else do you get introduced to Freddy Krueger but at 2:00 in the morning when you should be sleeping?
I remember sneaking up at night because my dad was an avid Tales from the Crypt watcher, and it obviously came on after I went to bed, and I would sneak up and hide behind his recliner.
I was making little horror movies as a 6-year-old with my classmates. So it's just embedded in my soul, I suppose.
Well, it helped that I was raised by a horror fan. My dad, who was a writer, he had done a lot of stuff in like commercials, and then he ended up actually writing a horror movie in the 80s. It's called Jaws of Satan.
I myself wanted to spend more time with my cousin Steve, because when I would go over there, you know, he didn't know what to do with me. I'm his little female cousin, so he would just put on a movie.
My cousin used to watch the Universal monster movies, and he was the only person in my family who ever really watched horror.
Can I watch this? This looks so awesome. And Mom's like, yeah, whatever.
It just became an integrated part of me.
At a young age, it just stuck with me. And here I am all these years later. I won't add them for you.
And so I've just been raised on them ever since I could remember.
I went to school for special effects. So I wasn't always necessarily a horror person. I wasn't raised on it. It wasn't like played in the household. But then I went to school and I learned how all of it was done, which made me like truly appreciate it. Like all the effort that goes into something that scares us for 5 seconds is something that can take a month to do. So that's really where it stems from.
My mother was a little more appalled, but my dad was really relaxed about it. And it was something that we both enjoyed doing.
And when I went to kindergarten, they asked me what my favorite movie was for like a little about me to hang out on the wall. And I said the Blair Witch Project. And that got a meeting with my mom at kindergarten.
The Fear Street books and different Goosebumps books. And,
You know, my dad started off showing me a lot of not super gory horror movies, but kind of more like old Twilight Zones and things that weren't like violent.
I then had a friend whose brother taped every episode of Tales from the Crypt, which was on television. And we watched a few of them. And again, I needed to watch more and I wasn't allowed. So what I did was I started reading horror.
So I really have to credit my dad for it, sort of in a roundabout way.
They've just become a huge part of who I am, and a lot of my tattoos are horror based, and a lot of the style in my house comes from like 70s horror and things like that.
I can't imagine my life without it. It is the reason my life is the way that it is right now.
And then just ever since then, I was the girl at a sleepover that, you know, got any horror movies? You got any whiskey? Do you got any horror movies?
What was the one horror film that got you into horror?
Jaws.
So there's this movie, it's actually a made-for-TV movie. It's called Don't Go to Sleep.
I'm thinking
Nightmare on Elm Street. For sure, that movie. I mean, just from watching so many growing up, and nothing really scared me except when I saw Freddy.
I'd say Children of the Corn, which I remember seeing a few scenes from. I think it was on TV.
I would have to say it might be the one that I watched a lot when I was younger because of my cousin, was the original Wolfman.
Definitely Exorcist 3.
Remember, there's a shot of a suitcase and there's a slashing sound and then there's a splatter of blood on the suitcase. And I was like, oh my God, I need to watch more of this.
Halloween had me so terrified. I could not watch it.
Even though I see it more as a thriller than horror, but it still belongs in the horror genre. And it seems basic, but I fucking love Scream. I love the Scream movies, like that very opening of Drew Barrymore and like her guts hanging out. I was like, holy shit.
And that movie still affects me like it did when I saw it as a kid. I grew up, I still live about 35 minutes away from the shark attack capital of the world. Everyone I know goes to the beach. I don't fucking go to the beach.
There's this one scene where she's rolling a pizza cutter like up the wall and like coming after her mom, and like for some reason that always got like stuck in my head.
I would have to say that would be Scream. Only because I think that was the very first horror film I ever actually sat down and watched as a kid. Mm-hmm. And through Wes's references in that movie, it led me to, oh, well, what are they talking about here? What's Halloween? Who's Jamie Lee Curtis? Who's Freddy Krueger? Who's Jason Voorhees?
Has loving horror ever made you feel, or even still make you feel, like an outcast?
Oh my God, yeah. Oh my God.
No, but I think that's because I like have sought out other people who love horror and probably felt like outcasts at some point, or would feel like outcasts.
That's a good question. You know, I previously did feel like an outcast when I was younger, because there weren't a whole lot of women around me that were into the things I was into.
I would say definitely, especially as a kid.
I don't know if it ever made me feel like an outcast, just because I was lucky enough to have really cool friends, and my friends always enjoyed horror as well.
In a small southern town, not all of these children are watching horror films. It was what Disney movie was on, what family comedy they were going to see on the weekends. And I sort of felt out of the loop on that because that just didn't align with my interest.
Yeah, it's funny because at work the other day we got a copy of the new Wrong Turn movie. And the guy who works in home entertainment was talking about it. And he's like, you like watching this stuff and you enjoy it. And I was just like, yeah.
And people have a weird reaction sometimes when they sort of meet you and they think you're sort of this proper girl. on paper, but then, oh, you actually not only watch horror movies and read horror books, but also you're writing horror.
I used to live a double life, I guess you could say. I didn't really talk about my love of horror. I've always been known for having passions since I was a little girl, and it kind of became a running joke in high school. I guess people were kind of making fun of me, but I don't think about that because I was embracing it. It was true.
Like, we look at it as, well, it's just fun. It's entertainment. It's cheesy in its own right. But they sort of look at it as, oh, wow, that's sort of anti family.
Be like, you like horror movies? Are you a Satanist? Are you like evil?
A lot of people think that there must be something wrong with you, especially as a woman, if you like horror.
It definitely has made me feel like an outsider over the years, but I don't feel the need to hide it anymore.
But now that I've gotten older and I've been able to find my tribe, essentially, I don't feel as alone. But so many of my friends live in other countries or different states. So there still is that isolating factor to it. It's difficult as a horror fan to find your everyday people, I guess, because it's not the norm.
Horror gives me something to allow me to be different and not be ashamed of it.
Not necessarily an outcast, but I would say maybe in dating, it makes me feel I've dated a lot of men that do not like horror movies.
Is that a deal breaker?
It's a red flag.
But it feels like such a home when you see another person. Like when I go out and I have something that has like horror related on it, they're like, oh, I love your shirt. I'm like, oh, did we just become best friends?
Are you a collector of horror merchandise?
Mostly Freddy Krueger stuff.
I collect these figures, like the shoujo horror girl figures, mostly, some Funko stuff.
I focus mainly on, there are little cool things like vintage Michael Myers stuff, and I love trick or treat, so I have a lot of Sam things, but definitely my whole office is very much Freddy Krueger.
You can see some of my Blu-rays and DVDs in the background. I also have some pops there. My Chuckies are a bit higher up. But yeah, in another room, I have more movie memorabilia.
I collect DVDs.
And I still need more.
Pop Funkos, anything that's horror that catches my eyes. I have a lot of autographs, things like that.
I like to collect t-shirts. Honestly, mostly just long sleeve t-shirts I love to collect.
I was never a collector until I met my boyfriend, and my boyfriend has an insane VHS collection of horror. So that opened up a whole new world. I never knew that it was a thing. I didn't know that VHS tapes were valuable.
Once my mom finally came around to it, instead of getting an allowance, I got a horror film on VHS.
Oh, and pins. Pins is a huge thing. I collect a lot of pins.
What's your favorite horror possession?
My prized piece is I have a Knives for Fingers, like I think it's limited edition, 14 out of 100, Freddy Krueger glove.
It hurts me to say this because I had to sell it like 5 years ago. It was like the Jason Voorhees as a kid and his mum Pam in that little, I think it was NECA set.
Oh, I had a Freddy figurine when I was younger. My mother sold it at a garage sale because she thought I was going through a stage, and I haven't forgiven her for that yet.
But I think at the moment, probably all of my Chucky dolls. I actually can't even remember what I have out there anymore.
If I had to pick just one, it would probably be the VHS box that I have of all of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies.
I have like an 18-inch Michael Myers, who I adore, but he's out there. But yeah, I got him secondhand, so he's like missing a piece. He's meant to be holding something, so he's just doing this but nothing's in his hands.
Do you do cosplay?
I do. And I got really into horror makeup for a while. Didn't go anywhere, but just for fun.
So I started out initially cosplaying as Nancy Thompson, and I did her pajamas at first.
I would do like a Little Red Riding Hood with a half wolf face, and a pulled out throat. And that was kind of like what I started talking to people and getting known for, was that cosplay.
I am the host of the Fear House anthology series, and I kind of am a cross between Elvira and Vampira meets Rod Serling. I do really appreciate the art of cosplay, and I wish I had that skill, but I don't.
And I just did a bunch of different costumes of hers. I did her booby trap costume when she's setting up the booby traps. So I found the book that Wes had used and pulled the pictures out of. And as far as I know, nobody found it before that point in time because nobody had brought it out and nobody had made a replica that I was able to find.
I like Marvel, I like Spider-Man, and I always like the Black Cat. Always like, that's my same thing I always do, is the Black Cat, Felicia Hardy.
I've done Nancy in Nightmare 3 with Kristen and the Freddy Snake.
I'm just starting to get into cosplays. I did Wednesday Addams, if you consider that horror. I guess it's crazy and it's kooky. It's altogether spooky.
My favorite, though, of all of them is Nancy, or rather Heather in New Nightmare. After the freeway when she's got the cuts on her face, because Nancy, I never really got to wear blood. Plus there was a little bit of physical aspect, so I would limp like she did.
I try to do like some inspired pictures sometimes. One time I did a photo of me in the bathtub with like a cheap Freddy claw.
Gage in the Rinko truck, which is just so much fun. And then I did a crossover of Nancy because a lot of Disney cosplayers usually will combine like princesses and Jedis. And I thought that was really cool, and I didn't really see a lot of crossovers in the horror world. So I did a mix of Nancy and Ash Williams. So I had a white shirt, white shorts. I had a boomstick holder, but I put my red sledgehammer in it. And I just put flowers on it and had little slash marks. And
as for like creating entire outfits, it's something that I would maybe like to do one day. We're going to Southport where they filmed I Know What You Did Last Summer over the 4th of July this year. And I found a dress like Sarah Michelle Gellar wears for the Kroger Queen, and I want to make a tiara. So I guess the easy stuff, I don't go like super crazy. If it's something that I can throw together quick and take like a little inspired photo, yeah, but.
So in the second issue that has Joe Bob on the cover, in the Lifers section is my story and pictures of me in Fangoria.
Do you have any horror-based tattoos?
Actually, almost all my tattoos are horror. I have the Evil Dead cover, as well as Freddy on the inside of my arm.
I do, actually. My entire right rib cage is filled up with horror tattoos.
Vampire teeth. I have a Ouija board on my elbow.
I have no tattoos.
The Freddy Krueger glove. I have the trick or treat lollipop.
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally virgin skin.
I have the Jason Voorhees mask, and we're actually scheduling like more of a Tales from the Crypt book sort of piece for the next time, but I plan on getting the entire side filled up.
I have spooky tattoos, I think. I have like on one of my legs, it's just all Halloween themed. So there's a pumpkin, there's a zombie arm, a burning church. Don't tell my mom.
A zombie girl. I have Sam from Trick or Treat, his like orange lollipop slasher with Jason's mask and a blood rose.
What's your favorite one?
Probably the one on my thigh, which is the blood rose, the Jason mask, and the Trick or Treat lollipop. It's very colorful. It's big. That would just probably, and that's probably the one that I get to show off the least because it's on my leg.
All right, talk about the horror community on social media, just in general, the good, the bad, observations you've made over the years.
I mean, I definitely appreciate it because growing up, I didn't have friends that enjoyed horror. I felt like such an outcast. And then when I started using Instagram, I didn't even know there was a horror community. I just started posting what I like, which is horror. And then it slowly, I started meeting other people. I've met some great girls off of Instagram.
Well, for a girl who lives in the South and really adores the horror genre, for me, it was definitely out of the gate more great than bad, because I initially started it just to have, I was thinking maybe I'd have a couple people to talk about these films with. And as I sort of added more content to my Instagram page, it grew and grew and just sort of took on a life of its own. And that, wow, it went from hoping I had 4 or 5 people I could talk to about these films that I love into, a few thousand that adored these same films.
There were a lot of amazing women, that's for sure. I definitely try and follow all of the women in the community.
I've actually had a really positive experience so far. But it's only been about 6 months.
And overall, my experience with social media has been extremely positive. I don't really have a lot of negative comments. I don't really have a lot of people who attack me. I've been very fortunate.
In the community that I'm in on Instagram, it's almost like, well, that's our little sister who loves horror. Like, yeah, she's a girl, but she's cool.
The community as a whole is very positive, very accepting, very inclusive. I'd like to see more inclusivity.
Good is I found such an awesome plethora of people that just love the same things you love. They want to talk about those things, and I want to see their collections. I want to see, hey, did you watch this movie? They're feeding you information that you wouldn't know about, and vice versa. And a lot of times too, like I'll get really good VHS deals from people because they're like, hey, came across this. Do you need it for your collection or whatever like that? So there is such a good core group of that community that, they're just hype people. They're really great to get behind you.
There's all these people who love the same thing I do, and they don't think I'm weird for it.
I feel like the whole community itself can get a bit repetitive,
Can be toxic, and it's sad to see that.
I think the internet in general is pretty toxic, so it doesn't matter what fandom you subscribe to. People are just bitchy and whiny.
I don't like when people post like on my comments, like, oh, you like this? It's an awful movie. Like, that actually happens quite a bit. And they try and make you feel bad for liking something.
I think that being online and wanting to maintain a presence can be stressful. I've seen a lot of people take time away. I've tried to back away from it. Trying to keep it up, trying to keep things interesting, trying to be true to yourself. And I think a lot of that causes people stress.
As a creator, it's tough to, hear negative things about your work or you as a person. I think there's this movement towards accountability, which I don't necessarily feel is wrong. However, I feel like sometimes there's a little bit of we don't take any pause or any breaths about things anymore. It's just immediately I'm gonna, say what I gotta say, and then that's the hill I die on.
And I've had threats from people. I've had people who I used to be very just accept everybody, don't unfriend, don't block, don't do anything. And if I ever did, it had to be something very serious. And so when I finally came to a point when I would put my foot down to protect myself, people didn't like it. I had all kinds of really bad threats, people making videos, threatening, people doing all kinds of stuff. And it's been scary.
But I do see a lot of bashing on there, which is crazy to me. We all enjoy the same thing, and it's already such a niche in normal society to be bashing each other. It's crazy to me. There's a lot of negative.
Even though I'm proud of myself, and I will go and tell anybody that I'm a horror fan, if I go to look for a job
there's potential that somebody could find that and then just immediately discredit me because of that.
I got my first negative comment the other day and it really bothered me a lot, but I'm like, you know what? People are going to be negative because they're negative to bring themselves higher up by bringing you down. And I can't let that negativity affect me.
I think that people can get lost and sometimes forget that social media is people creating pictures and people editing and people cropping or making their nose smaller or taking away blemishes. So even though it can change people's lives and it's connected me with friends and it really has been super impactful for me, it does cause a lot of anxiety for people. Probably already been scrutinized our entire lives, and so to have somebody in a community that we love tell us that this is crap, you look like crap, you're faking this, you're a poser, you're not a real fan, you're just a pretty girl, that's why people like you. That's just such bull crap. And it hurts. Even though we might get so many great comments, we might have a lot of people that we love and who love us, those couple of comments can really hurt and they can take you down.
How often do you post?
Right now I'm posting every day. I actually started this new idea. I want to say it's a project, but I'm counting down to Halloween. I've been making these like little Halloween visuals, if you will.
I normally will look at the analytics to see which days people like or are most active or the specific times of day. I work in social media now, so I know all of the things that you should do. However, I don't always deploy them.
When I was more into it, I definitely did try and post about 3 times a week. But then I kind of like thought to myself, am I only watching this movie so I can post about it?
For me, there's a few days of the week where I'm like, okay, I have to post something. I've even started theming certain days to where it's like Tales from the Crypt Friday or Twilight Zone Tuesday to make sure that I'm spitting out some consistent content.
I know there's supposed to be like, oh, you should post here and there should be like a time frame. I just post when I find something I like that I want to post. I think I'm more active on my stories because I'm constantly just posting things. But I try and post once a week.
Once you start to enter into a realm of this is a business, you can lose that passion and you can lose that fun and it could become a burden. And I don't want to lose love for something that I care about.
Everything seems to usually do better in the evening. Every now and again, I'll post like a good morning something, and I notice that it'll eventually catch up to the amount of likes on my other posts. Again, like, why do I care? But again, that I notice all of that stuff. And it will catch up to those, but I noticed that like my activity is going to be in the evening, and I try to do once a day so that I'm constantly putting stuff out there, and that if somebody sees a new post, maybe they'll go to my page and go see the couple other things that I've posted the last few days.
Especially on TikTok. I've really gotten into TikTok. I think, speaking of community, that is a fantastic community.
Is it?
Right now. Hopefully it doesn't like get muddied and toxic like Twitter.
Instead of consistency, it's been about posting what I'm really passionate about, what I'm really would love to talk to you about. So I'm trying to get back into that schedule, which I did have when I first started. I actually had certain times of the day where I would post certain things, and kind of strayed from that over time and busy schedule.
Wouldn't even have a clue how much likes I get, because here in Australia you can't see likes unless if you like click on it, which is too much effort.
Does it become a challenge to produce new content?
Yes, 100% yes.
Oh, definitely. Especially because this isn't my job.
Always.
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes I do. I've never been that girl who is, oh my God, selfies, like I got to post this. I've never been that person. I don't want to be that person, but yet I have to be that person now.
I don't know why we are in this world where if our likes don't get to a certain point that we're used to, and if we don't do that, if we don't keep up with the algorithms and keep up with the content and, hey, this is a new post and stuff like that, why does it make us go into meltdowns? But it does.
You'll be like, no, I'm not here for the fame. Like, yes, you are. Like, come on now. Come on. You would put yourself out there if you didn't want attention.
Like, if I post something and it doesn't get at least 200 likes, I'm like, what's wrong with this post, And it's nothing wrong with me. It's just Instagram's so weird, and people follow so many people and they have lives. They're not on their phone waiting for you to post something, but there is an intense pressure.
I would have said yes 2 years ago, but after 2020 and having almost everything taken away from me, including my job for an entire year, now I feel an immense gratitude for the ability to create and have a voice in any capacity, and just also just being hyper aware of time. So I try not to look at it like I'm pressured to do something. Now I'm trying to have the perspective of, you are given this time right now, so take it.
One thing I struggle with is I have very bad depression and anxiety, and there's some days where it's just like, how can I post and be happy if I'm not happy? And I have to continue to be this person that everybody expects me to be. So that is very overwhelming all the time. Especially, I don't want to disappoint anybody, because if people are taking time out of their day to talk to me or comment on me or anything, I'm like, well, I owe it to them to get back to them. But I'm like, if I can barely get out of bed because I'm just so depressed, I'm like, how can I keep this going? Mm-hmm. But if this is the path I'm choosing, I have to deal with that.
I do think that is something that women experience a little different than the men of horror. I don't think the men of horror feel as pressured to get dressed up and post a selfie and have something sexy on.
Yeah, there's definitely a pressure to have quality. So I can spend sometimes taking a photo, probably about a half an hour trying to get the right photo, because I've got to adjust my body. If I want them to see a shirt, I have to make sure that they see the shirt. My face has to be a certain way. And then I put it through filters and make sure it's, especially my face. I feel like sometimes I make really awkward faces. So I just have to constantly move and change expressions, and that can take a while. Or making sure that the body is positioned in a way that doesn't make me look like I'm hunching, even though I'm not. I'm standing up straight. If I'm sitting on a couch, it'll push me in. So I have to uncomfortably move myself forward. So it does take time. And sometimes you just don't want to have to put in the work for that.
Just as a woman, when you're 18, 19, 20, you maybe feel like, well, I want to be considered sexy. I want to be considered attractive and beautiful, but now I'm like, I am sexy. I am beautiful. I don't have to post anything.
Pretty quickly, if you have an audience online, because I was doing stuff on TikTok, and I just totally went off there for probably since the beginning of the year. And people will always be like, what happened to you? Where did you go? Are you okay?
The horror fans are unlike any other genre. So while that pressure is always on you, it's kind of nice to know that, you're always going to have your people in your corner. They might just not see your post that day. And you have to kind of keep that in the back of your head so you don't go crazy.
I feel like you're also afraid that you're going to get forgotten or lost with everybody else.
Does that freak you out?
Yeah, it does.
How close is the real you to what is seen on your social media?
Pretty darn close.
Pretty much 100% me.
It's pretty much me. It's I don't post anything I don't like or approve of. It's if you were gonna paint pictures of me, this is everything I like. I don't really just go looking for things to post. It's got to be from my heart or something I enjoy.
And I've gotten a lot of messages from people because they're just like, you're different than a lot of the other actresses or scream queens, quote unquote, that I've tried to reach out to, because they're like, one, you message back, and I'm like, I try to, and two, they're just like, you're just real. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't I be?
That is pretty much my everyday life. I mean, we have an entire room for it. We eat, sleep, breathe it. Our whole bathroom is Halloween 2 themed. So yeah, that is the real me for sure.
If it's Fear House stuff, I'm pretty close. You know, Fear House is just an exaggeration of me. I'm more of a villainess. But you know, all my Blair Bathory stuff, that's me. I'm out every other day trying to find spooky shit in the wild. I dress like that.
My Instagram feed is very like posed, and I look a little bit more like a badass because I'm really a goofy person. And then my stories are kind of the opposite. They're just like way goofy. So I feel like my whole personality is there. I just try to make the photos look good.
What is your take on modern day horror films?
Oh man, why you gotta ask me? I don't want to bring anyone down.
You know, I feel like they're really a hit or miss. I feel like a lot of it's redundant. You get a lot of like the Conjuring style, the Nun, things like that. That whole universe is becoming very redundant.
I would hate to generalize and say like all of it sucks and there's nothing good out there. And I know that's the cool thing to say.
So I'm not a huge fan.
I like it. I think there's kind of like a horror renaissance right now.
I'm so glad you asked. Mine is, it's funny because I'm noticing that like there's I feel like there's a diverge or a division when it comes to this stuff. New age horror, I feel like is more like psychological horror.
Or the big box cinema, box office horror, it could do better.
I'm kind of like, whoa, like I'm scared, but I'm like, fuck, that was a lot. Now I have to watch 3 Disney movies to recover.
I like them. I like certain styles. I love Ari Aster. Hereditary was the first movie to ever stick with me. Like I drove home thinking about that movie. I woke up the next morning, opening my eyes, the first seconds I'm thinking about that movie. And it's like, this has never happened. I've never watched a movie, let alone horror, that I didn't like, oh, that was good, that was cool, whatever, and then just keep going about your day.
There's a lot of good stuff. It's just not necessarily getting the attention it should.
It's so much of it is just remakes that I feel like it's sad to say, but I don't care for modern horror at the moment.
I mean, look, art is cyclical. Art is ever evolving. I think that as long as there's people creating, I don't have any gripe with it. I am not a horror fan that's like, we lost all our good shit in the 80s.
There are some good ones.
Mandy,
like Contracted and
The Rental.
I liked Hereditary a lot.
The Strangers.
The Lodge.
Lighthouse was cool.
I think there are a lot of really excellent horror films today. I think a lot of people tend to be trapped in nostalgia, and they kind of have succumbed to the mindset that it's great the way that things were. But there are a lot of great modern horror films
nowadays because it's a lot easier to make a movie, and there's just so much more art being created all the time. And the availability of Netflix and Prime, you can just put you don't even need a monster studio and tons of investing anymore. Not to mention technology enables movies to be shot more quickly and by more people. So I'm disappointed by the imitating, nothing's fresh anymore.
It's important to look deeper because there's so much happening right now that I believe there's something for everybody.
Welcome any new creators, any new directors, any new visionaries in the genre, because, you know, look, horror and fear are a universal language. And I think we should always be exploring the unknown and what frightens us.
What's your take on horror in the 80s?
80s horror is just untouchable. I love 80s horror. I'm a sucker for the gore, the boobs, the cheesiness. To me, you can't get better than 80s horror.
Oh, 80s horror is my favorite.
Love 80s horror.
It's cheesy, it's colorful.
How many different ways can we chop somebody's head off?
I think it was the quintessential time period for horror. If it wasn't for the 80s, I don't think we would have the horror movies we have now.
It's just so much fun. It's scary, but like if you have kids, you can still be like, hey, you want to watch this scary movie with me?
80s horror was so unapologetically ridiculous.
Made in 1980 something, immediately on my watch list.
I appreciate it. I respect it for what it is. I am not an 80s baby, so there's not that much nostalgia for me there.
Plenty of people that are younger are still loving the 80s horror. It's just so iconic. It's just iconic.
You didn't have Mike, you wouldn't have Jason, you wouldn't have Freddy, you wouldn't have Chucky.
I love those slashers.
Mm-hmm.
But those are just your icons. You're not even getting into you're not even getting into the whole Stephen King decade of the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you had The Shining, you had Cujo, you had Christine.
I am a huge slut for 80s horror.
Mainstream horror in the 80s, I don't know, they were still like taking chances and doing interesting things. And even in sequels.
I understand why people love it. I personally don't, get a hard on for the Friday the 13th movies. But I get it.
If it wasn't for the 80s, horror today would really fucking suck.
Best, untouchable. Can't touch it. Nothing will ever beat 80s horror. That's my final answer.
Are there any filmmakers that you particularly like?
Wes Craven for sure is just a staple. I would have to go with Wes Craven, even though it's an easy answer.
John Carpenter might be my favorite because he was just a cool, laid back dude and he just loved horror. And I just kind of like his brain. I like how his brain works.
Wes Craven, obviously, is a genius.
I really look for unique voices and people that are telling stories of their cultural roots.
I mean, I love Wes Craven. Obviously, Scream and Nightmare on Elm Street are two of my favorite horror movies of all time. I think he was such an interesting filmmaker. Even the movies that don't work as well, I think still had a lot of interesting things about them.
I am a really big Ari Aster fan, though, and I can't wait to see what that guy comes out with next.
It would definitely be Wes, only because Wes Craven gifted me the amazing piece of film that is Scream.
And I love Eli Roth.
I mean, I do love Jordan Peele. Like, he is currently, I think what he's doing is just amazing work.
Jordan Peele.
I like Cronenberg.
James Wan. I do love Tobe Hooper, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Of course, John Carpenter.
Obviously, I love Lee Whannell.
I love international cinema. I love Korean stuff. Right now, I'm really on a Korean kick.
I really like anything that Mike Flanagan does.
Dario Argento.
And then going back really old school, I love Alfred Hitchcock. Just that master of suspense.
Wes Craven, of course. Oh, holy crap, Wes Craven. Yes, absolutely my favorite. Anything by Wes Craven.
Are you into horror books?
Yeah, I think that reading horror books is great. Just getting your imagination going.
I collect quite a few books as well as true crime books. I'm into both of those. I got really into the Big Book of Horror. I bought some off of Amazon. They have hundreds of volumes of them, but they're lesser known authors that write just short stories, and they compile books that are this thick. And there's been some really, really good ones in there.
I really like sci-fi novels. House of Leaves is one of my favorites. It's a very trippy book, and I recommend it to any horror fan, even though I don't know if it's technically considered horror, but it's pretty frightening to me. So
no,
I like a lot of murder mystery.
One of the best books I've read recently was My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. So he writes a lot of good horror.
Love. Horror books demand real immersion, though. The best horror books, in my opinion, are thoughtful. I don't like sort of horror books with just gruesome scene after gruesome scene. I like more of a slow burn, character-driven horror. Obviously, I love Stephen King, although his books are way too long, in my humble opinion.
I have my old school 90s R.L. Stine and Christopher Pike books behind me, my YA collection.
I'll read Stephen King, like Misery is actually one of my favorite books. But that's because he's just like fucked up.
But I love when a horror writer just sets you in a mood and makes you feel the fear and trembling without sort of resorting to cheap thrills.
And I love Stephen King, and that's one author that I've kept up with.
So The Ruins by Scott Smith is a fantastic horror novel.
The book just gives you a whole nother world, and it sends you into a whole nother reality, and I love that.
I would recommend The Shining. I would recommend Pet Sematary, Salem's Lot as well. Definitely Carrie.
It was an awesome book.
Dean Koontz has a great book called The Fun House about a family of carnies.
Well, so I kind of have this itsy bitsy tiny obsession with serial killers.
Okay.
So I have a ton of serial killer books, which translates awesome to horror, because you think about how many of our horror icons are based on serial killers.
I could go on, but maybe we should move on because I'm talking a lot.
So what kind of horror is your favorite? Slasher, psychological, thriller, supernatural?
I definitely like slashers. That's definitely a favorite. The other thing I like is anything with like a satanic panic kind of theme.
I mean, I think slasher films are always I will watch like any slasher film that comes out. And it doesn't matter really if it's good or bad, like I'll enjoy all of them.
Yeah, I would say foreign or like psychological thriller, or even stuff like Mandy, like trippy horror movies, or movies you need to drop acid to really enjoy. So psychedelic horror, is that a genre? If it's not, it should be. I'm coining it right now.
Love slashers, man. That's a comfort thing, I think, for me. I love my 80s slasher films.
Slashers, definitely. I will watch any slasher movie. And then after that are horror comedies.
Home invasion movies scared the crap out of me.
I love creature features.
Psychological and bloody slasher.
Pumpkinhead, anything werewolf. I love werewolf films.
Slashers, because nothing to me is scarier than a crazy guy coming to kill you.
And I love seeing just creative monsters.
Psychological, because I absolutely love how the mind works. The reason why we do what we do, how we do what we do, all those things. So psychologically, I like to be challenged.
I like things that leave me confused. Like the movie It Follows is actually one of my favorite movies. Like it's in the top 5 because it's just so what the fuck, and it makes you unsteady. And it's a perfect example of how music can fully affect a movie. As well as like understanding people psychologically, because in that movie, he went out of his way to make sure you don't know what season it is. You don't know what decade it is. You're always on edge because of music. So it's that feeling of constant anxiety, which is funny because I'm a high anxiety person, but at least when I'm watching the movie, it's the movie and not just my life.
Definitely slasher. I think sort of being a 90s baby, that's when all the slashers came to the forefront. And so I would definitely have to say slasher, but supernatural has a special place in my heart too, because as a kid, those were the ones that actually scared me.
I also love foreign films that just blood everywhere, blood baths. I just love. I mean, just blood everywhere. It makes me so happy.
What are your thoughts on remakes and reboots?
This is a hard one for me because I just worked on the second Halloween movie. I think there are so many amazing ideas out there that they should be acted upon.
I just feel like if it's already done and it's a masterpiece and it hit one generation so well, maybe just leave it.
And sometimes they're good, but I don't know. I'm personally not into it. If it's not broken, don't fix it.
I have no issue with remakes. I really don't. Some of them are actually really great.
Personally, I've never watched a remake that's been any good.
Well, I think that remakes and reboots are pretty easy cash grabs.
People shouldn't automatically say like, oh, it's a remake, it's going to be terrible. Like, why can't somebody take iconic characters and put them in a new situation, add new characters, make their own spin on it? I think that that's interesting.
They just remade Candyman, and Nia DaCosta, who is a young Black woman, directed that, and it looks incredible. So, I mean, that just, I feel like, is a sign that let's get some fresh eyes on some of these IPs if we're going to keep telling the same story over and over again.
In a general sense, what scares you the most on screen?
Definitely supernatural aspects. Yeah. I'm a big believer in the afterlife and ghosts, and that just scares the crap out of me.
This is a great question, and I'm amazed I have an answer so quickly. What gets me is when you can see something in the background that not everybody in the theater sees, or the character themselves, but when you see something and then all of a sudden it just hits and you're like, holy fucking shit, there's something in the back, there's something in the back.
People talking in weird voices on the phone. When a stranger calls, Black Christmas freaks me out.
Not being able to escape. So I guess like being taken, being no way out kind of thing, being stuck, being chased.
Anything uncanny. A sense of things not being right.
Like mannequins or like people in sheets. Can't do that either.
Well, I have a fear of zombies. It's hard for me to watch cannibalism movies and end of the world movies.
And especially open doorways. Open doorways scared the shit out of me because when I was younger, I had night terrors, sleep paralysis, whatever like a kid could neurologically have wrong when it comes to sleeping, I had it. So a lot of mine would be stuff standing in doorways. So that just like followed me from childhood.
Anything with big claws in it, or the thought of skinning or being hooked, hooking.
I am very terrified of robots and aliens. Any robot movie freaks me the fuck out.
I'm a pussy, man. If anything jumps out at me,
I think home invasions scare me.
The idea of home invasion feels like it could happen like to anybody, like anywhere in the country.
Nope, sign me out. Can't do that. So creepy.
In your opinion, is there anything that is too taboo for horror films?
Ooh, I love that question.
Any kind of like animal death or torture. I think that's pretty common. Like nobody wants to see the dog get killed.
No, that's where I think you keep it going with the genre is you don't have all these limits.
So, as long as we're not breaking the law in the making and the actors are safe, I would like to say that there's no real taboo.
I think if filmmakers treat the subject in a sensitive and thought-provoking way, and it matters for the plot and the message and the theme, and the villains get their dues at the end of the day, then who am I to say like, oh, you can't write about that, or you can't film that.
Most like gore and torture porn, if you will, is in regards to women. And I find that disturbing. So taboo, no, but at what point as filmmakers do we stop and say, are we perpetuating something?
I feel like horror is the genre where anything can go.
You don't see a lot of children being killed right out. I think sex with children should be completely off limits.
I don't think it's taboo. It's just something that I personally don't think belongs in horror, which is cannibalism.
Honestly, no. I think that in any art that is created, there's an audience there to receive it with open arms. I think that horror is a place that people should feel comfortable to go there.
You have somebody masturbating with a crucifix in the 70s to The Exorcist. So, I mean, really, what can you do after that?
I honestly don't think anything is off limits.
Is horror a sexual turn on for you?
Well, when you're in fear or scared, your adrenaline's kind of rushing.
That's a really interesting question. Wow, that makes me think.
Wow, I feel like I'm on the psychiatrist chair. Like, oh, I've never thought about it. Maybe it is.
That's a really good question. That's a good question.
Thanks.
I get. I've never thought of it like that. No, I just enjoy it.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Because I think like watching a horror movie can definitely get you in the mood. Like, you know, you're watching people die, you're realizing life is fleeting. So why not cuddle up to your person and, you know, get it on.
No.
Oh my God, yeah. It's for everybody.
I would say yes.
No, but I am really interested in those alien egg dildos. Have you seen that?
Horror is an intellectual turn on for me.
Almost sometimes like the porn effect. I mean, people having sex on screen, you're like, oh, you know, I feel that. So I think that comes up a lot in the genre. So I think horror definitely can be a turn on for me. And anybody who likes horror films is sexy.
Oh, I love when the two are, you know, they're rolling around the bed and they just start and then out comes the bad guy and just boner kill.
For me in particular, I might have a little bit of a kink there, but I think it's just something that it's naughty. You're not supposed to have it. It's taboo, you know, in the norms. But I don't know, it's sensual. And I think I like that.
It's just fun. Like, that's the only thing I could think to say. It's just fun.
I mean, honestly, yeah, definitely. I think that any woman, especially who loves horror, I mean, that's the turn on when that adrenaline kicks in and you're on a date and you're with your significant other. I think that that's the perfect thing to experience together, is the fear that
Yeah. Is there anything hotter than like a naked chick getting chased by a guy with a knife? Like, why? Because think about it. There's so many people that have like violent kinks and stuff like that. So whenever you have both of those things, you know, or how many sex scenes are in horror, you know? Of course, yes.
I've thought about that before when it's horrible, I'm saying this, but like I've had like a few drinks and if I'm fooling around, I thought, what if somebody came in right now and just slit my throat? That's a bit TMI.
But the aspect of like an insane amount of blood gets me going. Like that I love. Like if I could be slathered in blood and have sex covered in blood, abso-fucking-lutely would.
I don't know. I've never thought about that before.
Have you ever made love to a horror film?
Yeah, of course. It's not making love.
Yeah, we've I don't know if you want to include this or not, but like there's certain scenes where we'll use that basically as our viewing pleasure and go right at it.
I have the entire Queen of the Damned soundtrack on my sex playlist.
It does happen, definitely. Yeah.
I normally watch them by myself, so no.
I honestly can't say that I've had it on in the background because I normally end up watching it.
Not during a first run movie that I'd never seen before.
Okay.
Like I've probably watched more horror and then gotten in the mood than watched porn and gotten in the mood.
And you just hear like in the background, like, like keep going.
This is a good question. I've had sex during the newer Evil Dead. So like when the glass went in her eye, he was going in me.
There is lots of nudity in particularly slasher films. It not necessarily is it essential to the plot, but do you feel it's essential to the overall experience of these films?
So I don't love nudity in horror movies. That's just me. I'm a bit of a horror prude in that way.
I think sometimes. I think like the 70s and 80s stuff, just because it is such a trope and a cliche, like it's just like, uh-oh, she shows her boobs, like she's gonna die next. So I think it's just kind of more of like a game, and it's like can be just fun.
I think it's just like any other film genre. If it fits into the plot, then yes. I think sometimes, especially in indie horror films, people will put in nudity just to put it in there and get people to watch their film. And that I don't agree with.
I think that those movies were made during a time where it was very okay to ask a woman to take her top off. So I feel like all of those films are a stamp of what was happening socially in that moment of time.
I think that kind of is its own charm. Like when I think of slasher films, if there's not a naked chick, that's weird.
You know, I am a defender of nudity in horror films because, you know, I realize that it's become something of a trope, but it's also something of a tradition.
Do I think it's, you know, important, essential? Just to, you know, maybe to have the charm. I don't think you have to. I think it's fun.
I don't think it's essential to the story. I think depending on the kind of story, you might be expecting it, or it might just add to the fun of it. Because hell yeah, boobs. You're a girl, but hell yeah, boobs. Everybody loves boobs.
Just like, oh my God, my shirt just came undone. No.
I think it is, because there is such like a recipe to horror where it's teenagers having sex get killed. You're always going to see a set of titties. You're going to see somebody's throat get slashed. You're going to see some guts. Like, it just seems like it is part of the recipe of a good horror movie. If you look back at all the ones that have like really hit home with people, you're going to see some titties.
Even if ultimately the predator gets his dues, which he always does, and even if he gets slashed by the final girl, and I don't like the nudity.
I think there should be more dicks in horror, though.
No, I mean, it comes with the territory, so it's to be expected. But I don't feel like a horror should be counted out just because, you know, somebody didn't strip down for a scene.
It is sort of annoying when you're watching a movie and like the couple is getting down to have sex, but like they're like, they still have their clothes on, you know, and you're like, well, they're not really doing, or like they come out from under the seat and you're like, everyone's underwear is on, so I don't know what they were doing.
So I think it has its place. I think that it maybe not essential, but it's a hell of a fun aspect to throw in there.
If you love slasher movies, you know kind of the dynamic of how the movie goes. Kids, they go somewhere, they get together. They're, you know, like you kind of know what's going to happen when you start watching the movie. So I think there is an expectation of it. Is it necessary? I think that all depends on the script.
Women are often portrayed in a specific way in horror films. Does that bother you in any way?
I think I have mixed feelings. Like, I mean, I consider myself a feminist, and like, I think it's complicated.
They were very sort of black and white about how characters were. So, you know, oftentimes it would be like the final girl was sort of the good girl and like often, you know, imply that she's like the virgin, or she's like studious one and she's kind of a prude and she doesn't like drink or like, you know, go hook up.
Horror can be very empowering. I believe Google did a study, and women who have more screen time or more things to say in horror than any other genre, which is great to have the women on screen. And sometimes their portrayals aren't great, but you know what? Sometimes the men aren't great.
Everybody has like a vulnerability and weakness, but 9 times out of 10, those same girls that show that, by the end of the movie, they're the badass that's, you know, kicking butt and the conqueror. You know, we have the term final girl. So everybody talks about how women are so, you know, put down in horror films. And it's like, no, they're using their sexual energy because they own it and they love who they are and they love their body. And every woman should be able to feel that way. And yeah, of course, they're going to be scared and weak and fragile, but that's just another side to you know, what the female is. And 9 times out of 10 in the movie, you see, you know, another side where they're totally badass and they come and they conquer and they kick ass.
A lot of times women are saving the day. And so I think that that is really powerful because those are some powerful female characters.
But then in horror, they kind of redeem themselves when they have the concept of the final woman. Like a lot of the times the lone survivor is a woman, which people can argue like, oh, that's misogynistic in its own way. But I think it's kind of badass.
There's actually 2 ways that women are portrayed. They're either the bimbo that gets murdered, or you've got the final girl, and the final girl is always this kick-ass, you know, take charge. So I think it's, you know, there's 2 sides to it. I don't have a problem with either one. I think they're both fun. I've seen bimbo men get killed. I've seen bimbo women get killed. I think everybody's fair game. I take no problem. I know there's like a lot of like feminism in horror, and that's not my niche. That's not for me.
But sometimes I feel that there might be a little bit of the male gaze that we're still appeasing.
The main thing that upsets me about it is they're portrayed from a male gaze, a male perspective. And why is that? Because the top line creators of most films are men, typically white men. They have a much different existence than I ever would, which is fine. That's what it is. So if I were to tell a story, I can 100% guarantee I would portray a woman differently.
When I was younger, I definitely questioned it. I was like, wow, she got fucked up way more than he got fucked up, kind of shit like that.
I think it's changing a lot though, you know, and I think it's interesting to watch the evolution.
But I think they're getting better. I think it's gotten better.
Is there an honest sexual attraction to serial killers or on-screen killers for you?
No. Absolutely not.
Yes. Well, it depends on the killer, but if they're shown to be a lot of personality, or at first they have control and power, yeah, there's some sexiness to it. I mean, it's depending on the charisma. It's hard to deny, even if they are a killer.
Why do you think I have
I don't know if I should even be telling this story, but why not? I once made out with a guy at a party. It was my first time in LA, actually. I once made out with a guy at a party because I thought he looked like Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker.
I don't know if it's so much attraction as it is fascination, especially when it comes to like true crime. Like a lot of people are like, oh, I love Ted Bundy. And it's not that we love Ted Bundy, but it's just that we love everything that his brain is about, because it's so weird and so fascinating.
He had much better teeth, I will say that. Richard Ramirez was a good looking guy with unfortunate teeth and also terrible nighttime activities.
But when I was a kid, I thought I was like attracted to Jason Voorhees.
Really?
Just that big body.
It was like therapy all of a sudden now. If they have like some kind of weapon, or if you can't see them, it's just scary, and you're just kind of, all right, take me. You know?
As long as he had his mask on, it was fine.
I think they're idolized for the wrong reasons. Yes, I joke around that I have an obsession with them. But my reasoning for being interested in them is purely psychological.
Billy and Scream, hands down. That man could kill my whole family, and I would just let him spit in my mouth.
I think that danger mixed in with the sex appeal is what can really attract you as a horror fan.
Is there any kind of sexual turn on in watching a death scene?
Wow, you're really making me think, huh?
So for me, it's not the death in particular, or even the blood. It's the danger factor that applies to the killer.
Mildly. I would say I don't necessarily get so much turned on by the gruesome factor. I like seeing it.
No, I can't. I mean, I can't really think of any. I think they're fun. I think I enjoy them and I laugh and I'm like, this is so awesome. But I'm not like, oh, that's hot.
the slice of a knife is very alluring to me. Blood dripping is very sensual to me. Those things are more of a turn on.
No.
Nah,
Okay.
nah.
Have you ever heard?
When it's like, and this is another reason I think I like having like a solid horror character. Like when you have your Michael, you have your Jason, you have your Freddy, is like when you make such a solid character that people love and understand and that just makes sense. It's easy for like when there's scenes with Freddy where like he says shit and you're like, fuck, Freddy, damn, do that to me. Like that's what I like.
When I can see sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Rosemary's Baby, when she's on the bed, rape is terrible, don't condone rape, but something about, yeah, that scene on when she's on the bed. You're asking me that question, I never thought about it before, but that image just popped into my head where she's laying on the bed and all the people are looking down at her and they're also in costumes, and that's just, it's frightening, but it's like, you know, yeah.
I don't know I don't think I've gotten turned on by a death scene per se, but I will say that I do think that there's something sexy about blood, just the imagery of it.
All right, so I'm going to run this analogy by you, and it's just something that I kind of think makes sense, but I'm curious to know if you think it works. It's taking sex and horror and mingling the two almost seamlessly. Whereas in horror, you have the stalking of the victim, and that is kind of the same as foreplay. In horror, you have the attack of the victim, and that's the same as the sexual act. In horror, you have the blood splatter, and that could be relatable to ejaculation. And then in horror, you have the lifeless victim laying, usually in a sexy way, and that's relatable to the euphoric aftermath of sex. Does that make sense to you?
I think you just kind of broke it all down right there.
Yeah, it does. I can totally see that. Again, it's all in your mind. If that's how you want to see it, that's how you're going to see it.
Actually, yeah, when you describe it like that, that actually adds up perfectly and balances each other. It's almost like life and death, sex and horror. I mean, that makes perfect sense.
I don't think I've really ever thought about it like that. And so that's like kind of interesting because now I feel like if I would have, for sure, I would have never been able to watch, a slasher the same way again without thinking about it that way.
Oh, absolutely. If you took it into like real world and outside of movies and you look at serial killers, that's exactly why there are so many that killed with a sexual motive. So of course, horror, which is all about killing, has the exact same basis to it.
Well, particularly the killing with the knife and the stabbing is definitely like the phallic symbol. And
no, to me, it definitely makes sense. It's not something that I personally relate to, but I definitely can understand the symbolism there. And
stalking being foreplay is a great point.
The stalking part especially, I definitely agree with that part.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. I never really thought about it in that way, but it definitely does feel like that. And to some extent, this might not be true for everybody, and I apologize to any sexual assault victims out there who might feel triggered, but sometimes women do like to be dominated. And so the idea of being stalked by a killer, they want your body to kill it so badly, and then a guy wants you so badly. There's kind of that power play that can be sexy that also kind of ties in there, not just in the foreplay, but in the chase, and just that sexual tension and that wanting to feel dominated.
I might turn on my next horror movie and be like, oh.
I've never heard anybody actually lay it out like that, but yeah, that's kind of hot.
If you were cast in a slasher right now, would you do it?
Yes.
absolutely.
100%, because I love anything to do with the genre. So if I can be a part of it that way, that would be awesome.
Oh my God, yeah. I'm a horrible actress.
Oh, hell yeah.
100%.
Fuck yeah, of course I would.
Even if it was a cheesy, low budget one.
Oh, absolutely. I got a set of lungs on me.
Okay, if you were in a horror film, would you rather play the final girl or the bloodiest death scene in the horror film?
That's hard.
I think I'd want to be a final girl. I'd still want to get my ass kicked, but I would want to do the ass kicking. I'd want to have that final stand.
I'm an actress, right? So of course I want to be the star role.
Ooh. I would say at this point, having the bloodiest death scene.
Blood. I want to die.
I would want to be the lead.
I probably would go for the bloody death.
I just want to die in a movie.
Death scene.
I think it would be so much fun to get killed off in a really cool way in a horror movie. Like if I could have been part of the Final Destination 3 tanning bed death. I mean, how iconic would that be?
Oh, I love blood, gore. If I could cough up blood, I would. If I got the chance to do it, I think I would take the whole day and just take full advantage and just make it insane.
So having the opportunity to be covered in blood and get the special effects, I think that would be something that I would be comfortable sitting in that arena for a while.
Death scenes are my favorite thing to do. I mean, the exploration of emotion that you get to go through is absolutely incredible.
I would imagine that most people would love to die in a horror film. It's like such a badge of honor.
So you got to put your thinking cap on for this one. What would be your dream death scene?
Something that was prolonged and horrific.
Biscuit. Oh, there's so much. Oh, shoot.
This is a very good question.
You really saw my decline.
Buried Alive could be good.
Something that you keep cutting back to the scene of me, like, like
Burned on a stake, and like if it was like a witch movie.
Blood, 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 blood.
Honestly, I would love just any trap from Saw.
because we've all seen it as horror fans, just like the, and then they're gone. That doesn't do it for me.
Do the ones where your arms are like stretching and getting pulled, or your limbs, and I get ripped off. That's awful. Oh.
I definitely picture like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe.
Oh yeah, coughing it up, out of my eyes, everywhere. I love blood.
Dig behind your eye to get the key. It's awful, but I would just love to.
Having a vicious murder stabbing scene in the hot tub, and then like,
ooh, so many good ones.
For me, I would want to go full on tortured. I mean, if I'm going to get killed off in a movie, I want it to be like a Hostel or Saw or something.
You know the part in Hostel 2 where she's hung upside down and she's cut and she just, I would love that scene.
Bubbles turn bloody and then seeing like the body rise.
Being trapped, chased, beaten, huge fight scene, maybe some stabs.
Like having my head chopped off.
I'd want something where I was just getting sliced up by like Freddy or something.
Tied down, beat. And then like a death.
Just limbs flying everywhere, blood, and me screaming like a maniac for 5 straight minutes.
Maybe something zombie. If I got bit by a zombie, that would be cool to transform.
Pitchfork.
Maybe begging for my life or screaming.
Honestly, and I think I would have to go with like something like Freddy's glove.
Or having something like huge, like stabbed through you and you're like, like while the killer's coming. That would be cool too.
Beautiful.
All right, this next part is rapid questions. No time limits, but just usually a quick answer. What was your first horror film?
Night of the Living Dead.
Suspiria.
The Stepford Children.
Night of the Living Dead.
The Wolfman.
Children of the Corn.
The Lost Boys.
I want to say it was Haunting of Hill House of Vincent Price.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Craft or Blair Witch Project.
It, the original It.
Scream.
The Exorcist.
The Exorcist was your first.
Yeah, I had great parents.
If you could watch one horror film, only one, for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Why are you doing this to me?
Candyman.
I think American Werewolf in London.
Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Inside.
I'm gonna go with Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
It's a French movie called Inside.
Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors.
Probably the first Nightmare on Elm Street.
House of a Thousand Corpses.
The Shining.
I'm gonna go with Scream again.
Nice.
Jaws. Scream, because I need something to masturbate to.
Any scene in particular?
Oh, Billy licking his fingers.
What's the one film that scares you the most?
The Sixth Sense.
The Exorcist.
Hereditary, even though I don't like it all that much.
Nightmare on Elm Street. Dream Warrior.
Nothing anymore.
I think The Exorcist.
Funny Games.
The Ring.
Paranormal Activity.
Final Destination 2.
I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Martyrs.
The Exorcist fucked me up a little bit.
Freddy or Jason?
Freddy.
Freddy, all the way.
Freddy.
Freddy.
Jason.
That changes day by day, but I'm gonna say Freddy.
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 Freddy all the way.
Jason.
Freddy.
Oh, Jason.
There we go. Old horror or modern day horror?
Old.
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 Oh, old horror.
I'll go old.
Old horror.
Because I love 80s horror so much, I'm still gonna have to go old horror.
Old horror.
Old.
Old horror.
Oh, 70s and 80s all day.
If you could be the lead in any horror film, what would you choose?
Reagan from The Exorcist.
Tanya Roberts in Tourist Trap.
Carrie.
Halloween.
Rosemary's Baby would be cool.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I'm going with A Nightmare on Elm Street for that one, just for the sake of being able to say I worked with Robert Englund.
Suspiria, the original.
A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Dawn of the Dead 2004, because technically you get to be a final girl and then die.
I'd have to be Nancy in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Bride of Frankenstein.
Rob Zombie films, yay or nay?
Nay.
Yay.
Yay.
Nay.
Yay, 100%.
For the most part, yay.
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 Nay.
Yay.
If you were in a slasher, would you do a nude scene?
Ooh, yes.
Yes.
No.
Depends on the money, I guess.
Honestly, probably not.
No.
No.
Yes.
I think only if it was purposeful.
Sure.
If that was my career.
No.
Yeah, I would.
My perfect tits would be immortalized forever.
Can you give us a scream?
I got a pig here. I probably can't scream.
I think my neighbors would call the police on me.
Okay. Not-
Do you like your killers wearing masks or with ugly faces?
Masks.
Mask.
Shit. Even though I do love my Freddy, I kind of like it when they wear a mask.
But I think I like an ugly face.
I'm going to go mask.
No mask.
Mask.
Both.
Mask.
Ugly Oh.
Oh. Deformed face.
It depends. This is a tough one.
If I have to give a quick answer, I think masks.
Mask.
Probably ugly.
I'm gonna go with mask.
Or masks.
What's scarier, children or old people?
Children. I work with kids. They're freaky.
I think children.
Old people.
Children. Children are creepy as hell.
Children.
Kids.
Old people.
Ooh, little children.
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 Oh, fuck. That is so 50-50, but 51% children.
Young kids.
If you were the killer in a horror film, what would be your weapon of choice?
I think I would have really long nails. And I would just choke the shit out of people.
Just some big, sharp Michael Myers knife.
Chains. Suffocating.
Probably like a machete.
Maybe like a butterfly knife or something.
Regular old kitchen knife.
think a chainsaw would be fun.
A good old-fashioned knife.
Machete.
I want
Like
a
pogo
baseball
stick?
bat with nails in it.
Machete.
I'm gonna go ice pick.
I think it would have to be a flamethrower.
Wow. Who is the sexiest killer in your opinion?
Rory Culkin in Scream 4.
The original Psycho. What was his name?
Anthony Perkins.
Anthony Perkins.
The girl from Audition.
Linnea Quigley when she turns into a demon in Night of the Demons.
I think Michael Myers has some real moments, but not Rob Zombie Michael.
Freddy, because he has all those knives.
Michael Myers.
I have to go with Jason, but like Kane Hodder Jason. He's tall, dark, brooding, you know, you don't know, he's quiet. There's something hot about that, I guess.
Jason Voorhees.
Billy in Scream.
Yeah, I'd go with Candyman.
I have to say Billy from Scream, of course.
Oh, Freddy Krueger.
All right, so we're going to do some horror trivia. You ready for this? What music duo recorded a Freddy-based song called A Nightmare on My Street?
Not a clue.
Wasn't it a rap group? Talking about the rap song is the Fat Boys, right?
I don't fucking know. Are you serious? What kind of question is that?
Oh, it was I can hear it in my head.
Will Smith and someone else. Shit, I know it is Will Smith because I listen to it all the time.
It wasn't Will Smith.
Oh, Fresh Prince and DJ Jazzy Jeff.
Atta girl.
It's oh god, but what's the duo? It's Will Smith and is it Jazzy Jeff?
Yes, well, it was DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. Yes, Will Smith.
Okay, yeah.
Crystal Lake had a name change in Friday the 13th Part 6. What did they change the name to?
I don't know.
No idea.
I'm wearing a Crystal Lake shirt right now, so I'm completely humiliating myself by
Are
not
you?
knowing the answer to this.
Oh shit.
Blood Lake or
Can I cheat by looking at my copy of Friday the 13th Part 6 in my file?
Camp Forest Green.
Forest Green.
Yeah.
It's like the ugliest color on a car.
What series had more film installments? Wrong Turn, Final Destination, or Hatchet?
Is it Final Destination?
Wrong Turn.
So Final Destination?
Isn't it Wrong Turn?
Final Destination.
Wrong turn?
Wrong turn.
It was actually Wrong Turn. Wrong Turn has 7.
Oh!
In 1985, a zombie film came out and blended comedy, horror, and punk rock. What was the name of this film?
Night of the Living Dead.
Return of the Living Dead.
Idle Hands?
Return of the Living Dead.
Return of the Living Dead.
1985, you said?
Return of the Living Dead?
Return of the Living Dead?
Is it Return of the Living Dead?
I'm gonna tell you I don't know, and then you're gonna say it, and I'm gonna break the computer.
Return of the Living Dead. In 1987, a comedy was released, and it had 2 high school kids obsessed with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. What was the name of this comedy?
I don't know. No idea.
Oh my god, I know this fucking movie.
I don't know.
I can't think of the name of it.
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Pass.
No idea.
Oh my god, I'm so mad at myself right now.
I'm rooting for you because no one's gotten this one right.
Isn't there like a scene where he has like the eyeball in his mouth and they all pretend that they're dead? Fuck.
Oh God.
Summer School? Yes. Oh,
I'm
I
gonna
know
say-
that movie and I love that movie.
What was the name of the paranoid old man on a bike in the original Friday the 13th?
Pass.
I can't. I know who you're talking about, but I can't remember.
No. I can see him, but I don't know his name.
Oh my god.
Crazy. I know this.
I can picture him when he starts talking to Annie, right?
I cannot think of it being on the spot.
Ralph.
I don't remember. I can literally see his face right now.
Mr. Phillips.
Crazy Ralph. Nice.
I knew it.
How many people did Michael Myers kill in the original Halloween? Was it 3, 5, or 7?
Five. No, it's 7. Isn't it 7?
I know there's 3 for sure.
5.
Is it 5?
I'm gonna go with 3. That's my final answer.
5.
The 5?
Yep.
5.
Was it 5?
Judith, truck driver guy.
5.
Annie. Chick with the pigtails. Boyfriend. 5.
7.
It's 5. What was the name of the double child in The Omen?
Oh shit. It's because it's a child. I probably blocked it out.
Damien.
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 Oh, Damien. It's Damien, isn't it?
Damien.
Damien.
Is it Damien?
Damien.
Damien, that's freaking right.
What was the name of the hotel in the film The Shining?
The Overlook.
The Overlook Hotel.
The Overlook.
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 The Overlook.
The Overlook Hotel.
The Overlook.
The Overlook.
The symbol of Halloween in the film Trick or Treat is Sam, a little burlap pajama wearing freak. What is his favorite candy?
I don't know.
The lollipop?
Lollipop?
Candy apple?
I'll say candy corn, but I don't know.
A lollipop.
Candy apple?
A lollipop.
The lollipop?
His lollipop?
It's a lollipop. In the 1930s, the Universal monster craze was at its peak. Which film came out first, Dracula or Frankenstein?
I believe it was Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
Dracula.
What? That's my only 2 choices.
But I'm gonna go with Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
Was it Dracula?
Frankenstein?
Dracula?
Dracula?
Which one came out first?
Dracula.
Dracula.
I think Dracula came out first.
I think Frankenstein came out first, didn't it? No?
No. What was the famous catchphrase from the 1980s hit Poltergeist?
They're here.
They're here.
They're here.
They're here.
They're here.
What film is responsible for creating what is now known as the Hollywood blockbuster season?
No idea.
Jaws.
Jaws?
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say Jaws.
Exorcist.
Jaws.
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 Look at me now, Mom.
I'm not sure if this is right. It's the only one that's coming to mind because it's summer, but I'm thinking Jaws. Yeah?
Yep.
Yes! So terrified. Whew.
Of the trivia or Jaws?
Well, both. But definitely the trivia. I was like, I'm gonna lose my card.
9 out of 13. That was really, really impressive because you did it. Congrats.
Phew.
If you could sum up in just a couple of sentences what it is about horror that you love.
I love horror because it's the universal language and it's something that we can all relate to. And I love connecting with other people.
Just the sort of cathartic feeling of watching a horror. You're able to explore your relationship to the things you're afraid of.
I love the way horror gets right into the primal brain, the non-thinking, primal fear, fight or flight brain. I'm an overthinker. I'm constantly in my head. I'm constantly analyzing and judging. I find it very hard to be in the moment, and horror helps me do that. It helps me escape myself, escape my overthinking brain, and just get right down to like the life or death, the survival instinct. That's why I like it.
Feeling, the adrenaline. It's just something so exciting watching it. Like, I've always just thought there was just something so cool about it, and I've never understood how people can't like it.
For me, I think it's nostalgic, and it comes from, you know, having family that loved it. So it reminds me of growing up with it.
Because people, your deepest, darkest fears come out in horror. And that's when you really get to see a person and who they are by what they're scared of. So if you find out what they're scared of, you find out who they are. And what better way to do that than through horror? I think that's the easiest way to put it.
Horror releases that adrenaline that humans no longer have to feel on a day-to-day basis.
I love the way that they take real life situations that could happen to anyone and really suspend reality in your imagination. When I watch a good horror or thriller, I get really captivated into the world that they've created, you know, and whether it's like vampires or it goes all the way up to like an exorcism. If it's done properly, you really, really feel the anxiousness, the fear, jump, you know, you're petrified sometimes for hours afterwards.
But no other genre is so open about the darkest parts of humanity. It's so fascinating.
But if it's a really scary movie, that feeling that you feel sticks with you. You know, it doesn't just go away when the movie ends. You're like, holy shit.
That little scare that you get and how it can linger, you know, like after watching it, you know, you'll be a little bit wary for a little bit.
I like how throughout history in horror, any human, and I've heard other people say this isn't my quote, but I do agree with it, that any kind of, say, American tragedy can be turned and written into a horror story.
Horror is the outcast of the movie genre, where if something can't go in another movie, it can certainly work in a horror film one way or another.
I love being scared. I love scaring people.
I mean, it explores things that you don't want to think of on a day-to-day basis. And it does so in the comfort of a theater or the comfort of your own home.
I love that tense feeling.
I mean, how fun is a horror film? I mean, it goes there. It takes you there. It takes you places that you would never go otherwise without this genre of film.
I love the monsters. I love the humans that are the bad guys.
The sort of taboo nature of that, of being able to safely explore those dark places, is what gets me for horror.
I love horror, and I love that. I love watching the old horror. I love watching current horror. I can't wait to see future horror. I love horror.
For